give you an example of how the left is just, by its own nature, very weak on crime. There was a guy, a murderer, who just got executed. He finally got his punishment, his just punishment, which is capital punishment. The U.S. plans to execute a man for a crime he committed at 19. Scientists say the research on brain development makes that wrong. So first of all, the scientists say, by the left's own premises, cannot have a conclusion in a moral argument, because what the left has said is that there is science, right, physical science, and that you can't derive an ought from an is. You can't derive moral conclusions from the physical world. That's the basis of this whole physical science that we're talking about. But what are they trying to do? They're trying to derive a moral conclusion from the physical world, right? But they're saying those things are supposed to be totally separate. Scientists and philosophers are supposed to be totally separate. But they don't separate them when it works for them. So they'll say, yeah, science says you gotta lock yourself in your home for the next 10 years. Because science says that. No, nothing about science as they understand it would suggest that. It gets more complicated because one actually probably can derive an ought from an is. One probably actually can derive moral conclusions from the physical world. But that argument is for another day. And that's certainly not what the left is trying to do. They're actually trying to invert that traditional understanding of things. The man committed a crime at 19, and now he's got to pay for it. First of all, he should have been executed at 19, right? He shouldn't have been languishing on death row for the past 21 years. They should have just executed him for his crime. But then they're trying to racially demagogue it, because apparently this guy is black. He doesn't look black to me, but I guess he's black. So a number of the articles about this and the tweets about this have said the U.S. is going to execute a black man. And the premise of BLM is that any black man who's in prison is there unjustly because we have a new kind of slavery and I don't know, they were all set up or something. Let me tell you this guy's crime. Christopher Vialva. Christopher Vialva bummed a ride from two youth ministers, a young couple, a man and his wife. He robbed them, he kidnapped them, and he stuffed them in the trunk. He then drove around for hours and tried to pawn the wife's wedding ring, apparently unsuccessfully. He then opened up the trunk, and while they were pleading for their lives, the wife was reading him the Bible to convert him. He shot them both in the head, but the wife didn't die right away. So he set their bodies on fire, and then they died. This is, by the way, this man would end up in Dante's sort of understanding of cosmic justice. This guy would end up in the very pit, the very lowest level of hell. He committed the worst sin, which is fraud and betraying, specifically betraying your benefactors. He asked these guys for a ride. Out of the kindness of their heart, they gave it to him. He kidnapped them, robbed them, tied them up, and burned this woman alive. That guy should be killed by the state. It is totally just. Capital punishment, very just thing. It perverts our system when there is no type of justice at that degree. When the president comes out, I understand there's a very big difference between, say, a drug crime and a crime such as Christopher Vialva committed. Though, I will point out, with some of these drug trafficking rings, there is a lot of blood involved. There's a lot of death involved in those too. But I get it. They're different. When Republicans come out and attack Democrats for being too tough on crime, you know they've lost the thread, because we do not have a problem in this country being too tough on crime. We are way, way, way too weak on crime. Even conservatives. Many conservatives oppose capital punishment. Many conservatives even oppose tough punishment because it's not rehabilitative, maybe. It's not deterrent, they say. Now, it often is deterrent. The reason that these tough punishments are not deterrent is because they go on so long that they don't actually seem like a punishment. If this guy had been killed at 20, as he damn well should have been, I think you'd see a much greater deterrent effect of capital punishment. They're not rehabilitative. I bet capital punishment has at least a chance of being rehabilitative on this man's soul. But there is a primary purpose of our justice system, which is justice. Justice. It's not just a therapy session, folks. It's justice. Punitive punishment. I know that sounds a little bit redundant. Retributive justice. That's what we're talking about. Getting retribution because justice demands it. There's a role for mercy too. That's the pardon power. but there's a place for justice as well. We've completely lost that. I hope you enjoyed that short segment from the Michael Knowles Show. Be sure to check out the full episode linked in the description or download the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.